Alright guys, this is one of my first goes of this using Google Slides. So it's the zero carb diet. I just want to talk about this because I'm on day 9 now actually because I done this yesterday. Um, and I'm doing it to fix gut dysbiosis and leaky gut. And by gut dysbiosis I mean gut fermentation overgrowth. Probably mostly bacteria probably rather than candida, which is another type you can get. That's another type of dysbiosis. And the idea behind this, I'll just show you 3 slides just to get it up. So yeah, I'm feeling better slightly. Yeah, because I never feel well, but say from 4 out of 10 to 4.5. I mean, a lot of times I'm up all day now without a nap, which is very unusual for me. And I remember that day 7 I had a big gurgle moment, and I thought I was going to have to defecate very fast. But then the gurgle moment happened, and I didn't have to defecate, and I think that was possibly a die-off moment. I believe that gurgling is either die-off or your gut healing itself, when it gets a chance to. So I just wanted to point that out. And then I'll just point you out to concepts and people in this sort of thing. Yeah, auto brewery syndrome, because I think many of us are going around basically with breweries in our intestine. And if you've got candida, if you've got a fungal one, that's probably definitely. And I think for bacteria, they don't in a moment. Bacteria doesn't produce ethanol apparently, but I think it produces other alcohols. So I wonder if they might, even make you a bit thingy. And it makes me wonder if that's the problem. That's what causes non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So really, for anyone with this, it'd be anyone who has a bloated gut or a lot of wind a lot of times, is addicted to simple carbs and complex carbs, so pizzas to chocolate, everything, crisps, all that sort of stuff. And the two things to wonder about probably is whether it's bacteria or whether it's fungus, like candida, usually candida albicans. If you've got fungal overgrowth anywhere abouts, in your tongue or anywhere else, possibly then it's you've maybe got a fungal infection in your gut, and it's because maybe that's a sign. It sort of drifts over. Um, so that would be candida, more than likely. And for that, I think the diet suggested is very zero simple sugars, but you can still take complex carbs. I think. Oh, that's my understanding anyway. But then there's the other type that's bacterial, and that's different because you need to stop complex carbs as well. So zero simple sugars, zero complex carbs, zero probiotics, prebiotics, anything that's a prebiotic, and that includes sweeteners and sugar-free drinks like sucralose. So it can be quite tricky to rule everything out. Like they concentrated diluted drinks that have got sugar-free. They've got sucralose in them, and I used to feel really ill on cherries and berries drink, which I really liked. And at the time, I thought it was because it was maybe inhibiting my detox enzymes like CYP, 3A4 things. But now I think it might be the sucralose in it was feeding the bacteria. In my own case, I used to think it was candida all the time, but now I think it's bacteria. And when we talk of this, we're talking about your own bacteria getting out of control, your own microflora. So, because your gut is 3 sections, you've got the stomach, you've got the small intestine, which is a very long pipe where you do most of your absorbing, and then you've got the colon, which is a sort of smaller, wider pipe, which is sort of recycling and preparing it for it's a waste bin, really. Waste bin and recycling, really. Um, so the main part is the small intestine, which is very long and thin. It coils over itself. Um, so that's a very high absorptive area, and that's where you do most of your absorption of your nutrients. And that's maybe pretty clear of bacteria, but maybe the lower bit you get a bit. But with these people, the theory is that the bacteria from the colon, which is absolutely crammed full of bacteria, microflora, that's normal. But the thing is that It's coming up from the colon, up the small intestine, coming further up, and it's competing. It's competing with you for your nutrients, and it's also producing toxins. So it's a lose-lose situation, you know. You could actually be eating a lot of B vitamins, you know, and end up maybe with a deficiency because the microbes would be, the bacteria would be eating it all, you know. So, especially if you get things like burping or anything, it's probably very high up, you know. If it's wind you get more, it's probably lower down. Because that's the way the gas is escaping, because it's these bacteria that produce the gas. And so, if you've got a problem like bloated gut, that's a lot of gas in your system, you know, probably. Or you get a lot of wind after eating lots of complex carbs, you know. At the moment we're taught that's a good sign, but I don't think it is actually. Um, if I could say up, if I was a billionaire, I would say up a test lab for this sort of thing. And my main test would be ultrasound for gas in the colon and small intestine, basically. Because your stomach is just a little ball. It's a preparation place. It's very acidic. I mean, like pH 2. I mean, your acids in your stomach could probably make a dent in a wooden table, you know. So if you get a lot of burping and stuff, that maybe you've got a problem higher up, you know. And then you go into your small intestine, you've got about 3 areas, they call it, the ileum, and I can't remember the other ones, but the top bit is very absorptive. So you do a lot of, I think sugars quite often are there. Then you've got your middle region, and then you've got your lower region of your small intestine. But that's really where the absorption is. And you shouldn't have very much microflora in there, apart from maybe at the end, but just a bit. But way lower than what there is in the colon. You know, you're talking log 10 or whatever. And then when you get into the colon, you've got a massive amount of bacteria. That's what it's meant to be in a normal person. But I do wonder if even there, people can have overgrowth of their normal bacteria. And Dr. Norm Robillard seems to think that as well. So that would be large intestine bacterial overgrowth. But at the moment, nobody really talks about that. So that would be LIBO. SIBO is small intestine bacterial overgrowth. So yeah, that's my main points about this. And for people to look about this, I think Dr. Norm Robillard, I think he's the one that's way ahead of everyone else in my opinion. He believes there might be large intestine bacterial overgrowth. He believes that, small intestine bacterial overgrowth is a big problem. And for him, he's actually a bacteriologist or whatever you call it. But he became interested because in his 30s or mid-30s, he started getting acid reflux and burping a lot. And he found out when he took low carbs to keep fit and that, it disappeared. Then when he took the carbs, it would come back again. And he realised that gas is caused by bacteria, because he knew that from his work. And he came up with a theory that that's what causes acid reflux in most cases, or whatever. That's my understanding. He's got an actual diet for it, the fast track diet, and he's got a bit of difference with the usual SIBO diet. So yeah, there was one thing that SIBO let you take, which he disagrees with. I can't remember what. Um, yeah, he's got a sort of fermentation protocol, and he judges foods on their fermentation potential. Um, he does say there's two that he says that I found it didn't agree with me. It was take erythritol or whatever as a sweetener, but I found it disagreed with me, so I don't know why. Apparently it's a very simple sugar or something like that. It gets absorbed very high up, you know. So he looks for stuff that gets either absorbed very high up or doesn't have any sugar in them at all, you know. And the other thing he suggested was sticky rice, which I can't remember what it's called at the moment, because that sticky rice is absorbed higher up in your small intestine. So he's thinking that it will be absorbed before it gets a chance to get to the microflora. But again, I find that had a strange impact on me. So for me, I'm just stopped most sugars altogether. When I say most, I've still got a bit, but I feel a lot better on this than I did when I used to take the Candida diet, because in the Candida diet I used to take lots of complex carbs and also maybe probiotics and prebiotics, and I used to feel terrible. I used to have to give it up after 5 days, you know, so I'm having a lot more fortune on this. And another aspect of it is I would integrate it with fasting. When I say fasting, I mean window fasting during the day. You know, maybe don't eat anything after 8 o'clock and then see how long you can go the next day. You know, maybe 12 o'clock during the day or whatever. So fasting, an eating window of 12 o'clock to 8 o'clock, you know, adapt it to whatever you like, you know. And that's the sort of thing Dr. Eric Berg does. Both these guys aren't actual doctors. They're actually professors of something, PhDs, you know, they get degrees. But I agree with Dr. Eric Berg. Fasting is probably better because I used to try, you know, taking lots of vitamins and stuff, but they always made me worse. I think it's better to avoid, you know. I think actual fasting gives you a chance for a gut to heal, you know. You know, I think gurgling is actually your gut trying to heal. But usually what people do then is they start eating again straight away. Um, and then you've got the, ultra low carb diets. They're all variations of that really. And for this diet, if it's SIBO, if it's to do with bacteria, you'll need to cut out complex carbs as well. And probiotics. And probably fermented stuff. And prebiotics. And see how you go on, you know, if you feel a bit better. For me, my guts definitely went in. I still feel pretty rough, you know. But for me, we're talking about decades, because I think we might have a sort of alcoholic health profile, you know what I mean? Not as extreme, but long term. I mean, if you've got a brewery in your gut, I mean, the amount of alcohol it's producing is way, way lower than if you were drinking heavily, or even drinking a can a day. Maybe it's like drinking, you know, a glass a day or a half a glass a day, you know, depending how bad it is. And like I say, this is mostly they think that's to do with candida, but because it's ethanol. But I think the other alcohols might have a sort of same effect, but then they're toxins anyway. And I also think people are prone to leaky gut, which is weird because your gut's like a sieve, a fine sieve to let small things through. But once you get leaky gut, bigger things get through, and then your immune system gets involved because it sees them as, you know, it's unnatural. And leaky gut, I think the two things go together. If you solve the dysbiosis, then you'll solve the leaky gut as well, you know. So I think these are just things to think about. At the moment, I'm on an ultra low diet. I've just made my one up. I'm trying to avoid things, the obvious things like wheat and all that. I'm still taking some stuff that probably have, you know, because there's lots of hidden wheat and things and hidden complex carbs and hidden sugars like sausages, you know. So I'm just, I mean, you don't need to go cold turkey, like, and that's something you could eat actually. But you know, you maybe try and make meats your snacks and stuff. You know, sliced meat. It's just something to think about at the moment. You know, I'm feeling better than I did definitely on the candida diets. You know, I was probably making myself worse because unfortunately, if it's bacteria, when you take complex carbs, you're making yourself worse. And when you take probiotics, etc. In fact, that might be a sign that you've got this problem, you know. If you go in that diet and you feel a lot worse. Okay, I'll leave it at that just now. It's just something to think about. As I say, this is my first real go at Google Slides, so hopefully I'll get better at it, you know.